These are my favorite art instruction books on drawing and painting. They're in no particular order, and there are links to these books in the description. This is one of my favorite books on drawing. It's Keys to Drawing by Bert Dodson. It's like a drawing workshop in a book. There are different assignments in here. He has you draw your own eyes. Another fun assignment was drawing a mechanical object like a sewing machine or an egg beater. Lots of good tips in here. Some of my favorites are when you see a trapped shape, draw it. And another word for a trapped shape is a negative shape. So if you look at this chair, he's talking about drawing this triangle shape instead of drawing the actual structure of the chair. There's a whole section on proportions and measuring things. Here's some examples of that. If you're drawing a person, you might figure out where the midpoint is on that person, or in this drawing of a child, he's pointing out that a horizontal line shows that the head is pretty much the same height as the knee, or in this drawing of this man, the bottom of the ear is about where the lips are, the top of the ear is like where his glasses are. There's a wide range of drawing styles in this book. I think no matter what your style is, you'll find something useful in here. 60 Minutes to Better Painting by Craig Nelson. The whole premise behind this book is doing small, quick studies will improve your painting skills. For example, this is a 40-minute study. This is 14 by 18 inches and it took him an hour. So how do you get a painting done within 25 to 60 minutes? Well, he describes the quick painting process, and there's different techniques that you can use to simplify the subject. One of them is the two value statement, where you come up with a color for the highlight area and the shadow area, and that captures the essence of the subject. And another technique is the block-in technique, where you really don't sketch it in with pencil first. You just block in the basic shapes directly with your paintbrush and then refine them as you go. So this page was pretty useful. He describes the various stages that you go through. In this example, he spent 4 minutes on the sketch and then an additional 11 minutes blocking in the basic colors. So you can see how quickly he builds up the painting. It's a really good book. I found it useful and it helped me to become more efficient as a painter. Daily Painting by Carol Marine. So the benefits of painting small and often. So some of the benefits are you're less emotionally involved. It facilitates quick growth. You feel less fear. You enjoy the process more. You gain confidence. There's a whole host of benefits to painting every day, or as often as you can. There's a whole chapter on color and color mixing. She has a color wheel and she makes a color chart that she uses for reference when she paints. It's a nice painting. Here's a color mixing exercise I can relate to. She gets paint samples from the hardware store and then she tries to match the color. I like this section. She shows how she maps out the different shapes so the proportion is right. She does the drawing with the brush. There's a chapter on composition, and this is a basic example where the one on the top here is kind of boring because the spacing is so regular. But when you have two objects gathered to one side and another one off to this side, it makes it much more dynamic. If you're not a daily painter, I recommend you give it a try. You might not do it all the time, but it will definitely help improve your skills. Color and Light by James Gurney. This book is jam-packed with a lot of useful information about color and lighting. Rethinking the color wheel. There's many problems with the red, yellow, and blue color wheel, which he outlines in this chapter. This is basically the color model I have in my head when I mix colors. It's the cyan, magenta, yellow color wheel, evenly spaced between the red, green, and blue color wheel. Here's what he calls the green problem. The greens in this painting are pretty close to how they appear in nature, and I say this works. But sometimes in the springtime, the greens can be a little bit too vivid. Like they're a yellow green, which is sometimes called vegetable green. And he talks about how you can tame greens by adding red. He makes the argument for painting on site because here's a photograph of some rocks and these are the colors he painted on site. The idea being that the camera can't capture the subtleties that you can as an artist. If you have an interesting color, I highly recommend picking up this book. Fill Your Oil Paintings with Light and Color by Kevin McPherson. This is a really good book about painting. He covers a lot of the materials, and I like that he shows you how to make your own canvas panels. So you can glue canvas to like hardboard, then you can cut it down. I like this tip. He talks about squeezing out long worms of paint so that you can keep it clean. You just gradually work your way towards the end of it. This is a fun little exercise. He says you could take a newspaper and a magic marker and use the marker to block in the basic shadow shapes of the photographs in the newspaper. I like this section. General steps for constructing a painting. So he has a set of steps that you can follow to create a painting. So there's a demonstration where he paints sunflowers, and there's the finished painting. He has a section on painting outdoors. He actually went on to write a second book about landscape painting, but this chapter is also pretty informative. This is probably one of the better books on painting. It covers landscape painting and still life painting, mixing colors, and lots of other good tips. This is the Kindle version of the Landscape Painter's Workbook. I would say a lot of this book is about simplifying the subject matter. He talks about how experienced artists start with the basic shapes. They don't start out with the detail, like this painting here of boats. You don't see really too much of a detailed line drawing in here. I like this exercise where you have one subject and you come up with 3 different compositions from it. So here's a reference photo, and then from that you can make a vertical composition, a square one, and also one that's horizontal. I thought this was interesting because I've experienced this a number of times where you think it's an interesting photograph, but when you paint this foreground gets kind of boring and it looks flat. He recommends accentuating the perspective lines in the field, like he does right here. And it makes it have more depth. It draws your eye towards these trees in the background. It's the same with this streetscape where this is just a bland area of asphalt, but he added a crosswalk and some lines in here, so it creates a sense of depth. Anyways, there's a ton of information in this book. If you're into landscape painting, I highly recommend it. Landscape Painting Inside and Out by Kevin McPherson. He covers the tools and materials that you need to begin painting, but the exercises are the meat of the book. One of the first demonstrations is to take a photograph and trace the basic shapes of it, and that trains you to simplify your subject. He recommends different painting challenges to keep things interesting. So like day 1, you would stress the academics. Day 2, you would paint with passion, or day 3, you would do a 1-hour painting. Another one is paint by the pound, squeeze out a lot of paint and use all of it. I thought this was a really good exercise. He took the colors from this western landscape that he painted outdoors, and he applied it to this painting of a cathedral. There's a chapter on making money, doing what you love, the whole business side of being an artist, and principles for managing a career. If you're looking for some ideas and some inspiration, I'd recommend picking this book up. How to Paint Fast, Loose, and Bold by Patty Malika. In the introduction, she mentions that painting fast doesn't necessarily mean literally fast. She says it's more about painting mindfully, creating a strong foundation. She emphasizes simplifying values. Here's a good example. There's a color photograph of a city. This is it in black and white. But then, as an artist, you can simplify it even further. She massed together all these different shapes so it becomes more dynamic and simple. In this example, she's demonstrating that it helps to overlap objects as opposed to having space between all of the objects. It just makes it more interesting and it creates a sense of depth. There's a section on color. She begins that section by talking about using realistic colors, and then you can modify or invent colors. When you invent colors, value becomes important. The painting of this pug uses random colors, but it works because she selected colors based on the value. If you're looking to paint in a looser and bolder style, the exercises in this book can help you to achieve that. Archisketcher by Simone Ridyard. This book is about sketching architecture on location. This chapter is entirely about perspective, and that involves using vanishing points to create a sense of space, the way the lines converge. There's a basic explanation of what a one-point perspective drawing looks like. There's a vanishing point on the horizon, and all the lines converge to that one point. There's different ways to create a sense of depth in a painting, and atmospheric perspective is one of them, where objects get lighter as they recede into the background, so mountains are usually lighter. Here's a section on 2-point perspective, which gets more complicated than just having one vanishing point. You can see that these lines converge over here to this point, and then these lines over here converge on that point. Section on color, understanding warm and cool colors. There's a color wheel. This is interesting too, is using non-waterproof ink so your line drawing melts a little bit as you brush over it. I recommend this book if you're just looking for inspiration, or if you want to learn more about drawing buildings and perspective drawing. Pick it up and see what you think.